They didn't just doubt you. They bet against you, loudly, confidently, and with a smugness only fools wear like perfume. They were so sure you were the slow one, the weak one, the one who never quite got it. But here's the truth they're choking on now. You understood everything. You just had the self-control not to react. While they mistook your silence for stupidity, you were decoding every fake smile, every backhanded comment, every setup. And now that the tables have turned, their pride is melting faster than ice under a spotlight. They didn't realize the quiet one was the most dangerous. They never considered that the one who spoke least was the one who watched everything. They laughed at your simplicity, rolled their eyes at your silence, and threw their cheap power plays in your path. But that's the thing about quiet minds. They're not sleeping. They're strategizing. The shift has already happened. That's why people are awkward around you now. That's why they hesitate before speaking. That's why they whisper when they used to shout. You're not imagining it. This is the aftermath of exposure. You didn't shout to be heard. You stayed silent to be obeyed. The universe made sure your silence had weight, and now it's crushing the ones who thought they were clever. If this message already speaks your truth, hit that like button and subscribe to return the energy. This is how we keep this truth moving, louder and stronger. This is how we keep the enemies cornered by their own actions. Your support makes this message echo in places they thought were safe. They were so busy putting on performances, they forgot you were writing the script the whole time. You watched them like a director behind the glass. You caught the plot holes, the lies, the fake alliances. You let them talk, let them joke, let them feel powerful in rooms they never built. But now those rooms are shaking, because you, the one they mocked, turned out to be the blueprint the whole time. See, the most intelligent people don't need validation. They don't jump into every argument. They don't interrupt. They listen, they calculate, and when they move, it's precise, strategic. That's why your silence wasn't weakness, it was a weapon. They just didn't hear it coming. And let's talk facts. Studies have shown that emotionally intelligent people often get underestimated early in life. They're told they're too sensitive or too quiet, while others grab attention with noise and charm. But here's what always happens. The quiet ones grow up and own the rooms the loud ones use to beg to enter. Your entire life has been a setup for this moment. You were gathering data, stacking knowledge, and building endurance while they were busy showing off and burning bridges. There's a reason their stories don't add up anymore, a reason they stutter when your name comes up. It's because you've outgrown the lies they told about you. And worse, they know you know. That's what's eating them. It's not just that you're smart. It's that your intelligence comes with proof, with memory, with strategy. You didn't just survive their games, you archived them. Remember that time they laughed behind your back, only to ask for your help a year later, or the time they gossiped about you and then copied your ideas, or the moment they told others you were too dumb to notice. But you had every receipt, every pattern, every motive memorized like a chessboard. That's what they're dealing with now. The realization that they built their little empires on false assumptions, and you've got the master key to tear it all down with a sentence. This isn't revenge, it's revelation. It's the quiet strength finally walking through the door with its head high. This is the universe rewarding the observers, the listeners, the ones who stayed calm while chaos tried to provoke them. The ones who walked away instead of fighting dirty. The ones who chose peace over performance. And you, chosen one? You're not just intelligent, you're dangerously intelligent. The kind of smart that stays hidden until it's too late. The kind of awareness that doesn't need to announce itself. That's why your presence now sends shivers. They're scared, and they should be. Because now they have to face what they tried to bury, the fact that you're the smartest person in every room they tried to keep you out of. So let them talk, let them scramble, let them guess what you know and how you'll use it. The power's already shifted. You're not the underdog anymore. You're the force they never saw coming. And while they wasted years trying to dim your light, you quietly became the sun. Keep watching, keep moving. Your mind is sharper than ever. Your silence is louder than their noise. And your victory, it's going to be painfully brilliant. And listen closely. Chosen one, if your instincts have been quietly screaming, "They had no idea who I really was," then you're exactly where you need to be. What's coming next isn't just information, it's confirmation. This isn't for the loud ones or the show-offs. This is for the observers, the thinkers, the ones who've been underestimated for far too long. If that's you, drop 777 in the comments right now to mark the moment your silence begins to speak volumes. This is your turning point. And now, let's break it all down step by step. But I'll be honest with you, if you're truly the intelligent soul they misjudged, you won't just watch this halfway. You'll feel that pull to stay until the very last word. Why? Because you've waited your whole life for someone to finally say what you've always known. Let's get into it. Number 1, they mistook you for slow, but you were always 10 steps ahead. They laughed at your silence, never realizing it was the sound of a genius mapping their every move. They thought you were behind, that you didn't get it, that you were slow to process, late to catch on, or maybe just plain average. But what they failed to understand was this: your intelligence wasn't loud, it was lethal. While they were sprinting to be seen, you were still, watching, studying, picking up on details they couldn't even recognize as important. They called it daydreaming, zoning out, or being passive. But in reality, you were analyzing everything. You were never behind. You were just playing a different game. They relied on memory like it was the highest form of intelligence, but you knew better. Anyone can memorize facts. Parrots do that. Machines do that. Real brilliance? It's perception. The ability to read the room before a word is spoken. The power to see patterns forming in the background while others are distracted by the noise in front. That's what you had. That's what you still have. And that's why you're dangerous now. Let's be clear. If intelligence was just about spitting out facts or scoring high on tests, most manipulators would rule the world. But they don't. Because when the test ends, real life begins. And in real life, perception is everything. You don't just store information, you dissect it. You don't just hear words, you listen to what wasn't said. While others were chasing applause, you were collecting truth like a sniper loading rounds. Silent, accurate, and with purpose. They expected you to bark out knowledge for approval like a trained show dog, but you never cared for the performance. You didn't need the claps, the trophies, or the spotlight to prove your worth. That confused them. It scared them. Because in their world, if someone isn't begging to be seen, they must not have anything worth showing. And that's where they were dead wrong. Because you, chosen one, never needed a stage. You were the entire blueprint they copied from and mocked at the same time. They were loud and flashy, stuffing their egos with recycled quotes and half-baked theories they didn't even understand. They wore intelligence like a costume. You wore yours like armor, quiet, functional, ready. While they were trying to sound deep, you were building depth. While they were memorizing answers, you were asking questions they didn't even know existed. They thought you were naive because you didn't interrupt. They thought you were clueless because you didn't correct them. But in truth, you knew too much to waste energy on clowns in costume. Your brain isn't a hard drive, it's a radar, and that's why they couldn't figure you out. Because you were never trying to fit in. You were scanning for truth, stripping down layers, noticing contradictions, storing every fake gesture, and tucking it away until the time was right. You were decoding the world in real time. And now that your time has come, they're looking at you like you grew wings overnight. But no, this was always who you were. They just couldn't comprehend it before. Some of you were called slow learners. Some of you were sent to the back of the classroom. Some of you were laughed at for taking your time. But hear this, slow isn't weak. It's strategic. The tortoise didn't win because he was fast. He won because he understood the terrain. That's you. Every moment they mocked, every time they whispered, every look they gave you as if you weren't sharp enough, you turned it into data. And now you're operating on a level they'll never touch. Have you noticed the change yet? How they hesitate now before lying, how they look uncomfortable under your gaze. That's not paranoia, that's power. You're not just seeing things clearly, you're making people feel exposed simply by existing. That's perception at work. That's the kind of intelligence no degree can measure. And now they're realizing they were dealing with a mind far beyond what they could manipulate. They told people you were too quiet to be smart. They called you too spaced out or in your own world. And yet, here you are, connecting dots others can't even see. You know when someone's lying before they finish their sentence. You feel the energy shift in a room before anyone else. That's not coincidence. That's not magic. That's perception-based intelligence. And it terrifies them. Because unlike memory, perception can't be copied. You can't fake it. You can't Google it. You either have it or you don't. And chosen one, you've always had it. You were the one who noticed when two people gave the same story with slightly different words. You were the one who caught the nervous glance, the forced smile, the voice cracking on a lie. You read people like open books while they were busy highlighting their titles. Even when you acted confused, it was strategy. You played dumb so they'd speak freely. You let them explain things you already knew just to hear what they left out. That's next-level intelligence. And now they're wondering how you knew. How did you figure it out? How are you always 5 steps ahead? But they'll never really understand, because what you have can't be taught. It's lived, it's earned, it's embedded in you. You're not here to prove yourself. You're here to expose the lie that intelligence must look a certain way. You're not a robot made to memorize. You're a storm made to dismantle illusions. That's what your presence does now. That's why people shift when you walk in, because silence backed by perception feels like a mirror. And most people aren't ready to see themselves, so let them talk. Let them misjudge. Let them wonder how they got it so wrong. Because the more they speak, the more they reveal. And the more you stay quiet, the more powerful you become. This is your zone now. Their words bounce off, but your insight cuts deep. You don't need to raise your voice. Your intelligence raises the stakes. This is your vengeance, clean, silent, surgical, and they never saw it coming. Number 2, they worshipped the classroom. You escaped the cult. You didn't fail the system failed to confine you. They called you unmotivated, said you lacked discipline, whispered that you wouldn't go far because you didn't chase the paper trails they were all dying to follow. But here's the punch they never saw coming. You were never behind. You were never lost. You were just awake in a system built to make everyone else sleep. They were proud prisoners, bragging about their cages while you quietly built wings. They told you that intelligence had a uniform, that it sat in neat desks, raised its hand on cue, and passed every test someone else created. But real intelligence doesn't follow scripts. It questions them. And that's what made you dangerous. From the moment you started asking, why does this matter? Or who wrote these rules? You became a threat to everything they believed made them superior. You didn't reject knowledge. You rejected indoctrination. And they couldn't handle that. Imagine this. You're in a room where everyone's reading from the same manual. The walls are plastered with slogans about success, and anyone who dares speak outside the script is labeled disruptive. That was your childhood. That was their system. You weren't distracted. You were already awake. You saw through the formula. You saw the assembly line. While they were polishing apples for the teacher's desk, you were asking who owned the orchard. That's not rebellion. That's intelligence with vision. They needed you to believe that your worth could be stamped in ink and sealed in an envelope, that without a certificate, your thoughts weren't valid. But what they don't understand is this. The deepest thinkers in history rarely came out of the system. They escaped it. From Da Vinci to Tesla to Malcolm X, the pattern is clear. Systems train obedience. Vision grows in wild soil. You didn't fit their grading scale because your intelligence was never meant to be measured in bubbles and scantrons. You saw the hidden curriculum. You noticed how creativity was punished, how curiosity was redirected, how obedience was rewarded. They called you a problem child when you asked real questions. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right too soon. And that scared them. They followed the rules like gospel, but what happens when the rules were designed to limit you? You didn't want to memorize dates. You wanted to understand cause and effect. You didn't want to quote facts. You wanted to dig up truth. You weren't interested in parroting their safe, recycled answers. You were born to crack the safe and rewrite the script. And now you think circles around the very people who once claimed to be above you. They didn't escape the system, they became it. Perfect reflections of a factory that stamps out degrees but not depth. Their intelligence is reactive, yours is introspective. They can pass exams. You can see through illusions. That's why you make them nervous now. They spent years memorizing, but you understand. They built walls around their minds. You broke out. Let's go deeper. Think back to the times they rolled their eyes when you asked something off topic, when you were told to stop overthinking, to stick to the lesson plan. But the lesson plan never fit you. That's because it wasn't designed for you. It was designed to contain you. And now that same mind they tried to shrink is out in the open, analyzing, decoding, thriving. Imagine a chessboard where all the pieces move the same, except for one. You were that piece. And because your movement didn't match theirs, they said you were playing the game wrong, but you weren't playing their game. You were playing beyond it. They stayed trapped in structured logic. You saw the emotion behind decisions, the patterns in behavior, the architecture of systems. That's intelligence no classroom can replicate. And they hate that, because while they were being trained to follow leaders, you became your own. While they were chasing positions, you were chasing perspective. And while they defined success by applause, you defined it by awareness. Now, the same people who look down on you suddenly act cautious around you. Not because you changed, but because they finally realized you see through them. You read people now the way they once read textbooks. You analyze intentions like others, analyze formulas. Your experience, your awareness, your pain, and your questioning gave you an education no degree could ever match. And here's the twist. They know it. They know they can't outthink someone who escaped the very system that boxed them in. That's why they mock what they secretly envy. They say, well, if you're so smart, why didn't you finish school? As if paper proves power, as if credentials replace character, as if classroom obedience equals intelligence. What they don't understand is that you outgrew the cage before they even saw the bars. You weren't kicked out of the system, you walked out, with your mind intact, with your vision clear, and with your purpose unshaken. So now, let them flash their achievements. Let them name-drop universities. Let them pretend their titles give them insight. Because deep down, they know something they'll never admit out loud. You didn't need their system to become extraordinary, and that makes you untouchable. This is your payback, but it's quiet, not petty, not loud, just undeniable. You are proof that education and intelligence are not the same thing. You are proof that truth seekers don't wait for permission. And you're living evidence that the system doesn't create brilliance. It often hides it. Welcome to the other side, chosen one. You weren't rejected by the system. You rose beyond it. Let them stay where they are. You've got a whole world to outthink. Number 3. You sniff out lies before they learn to crawl. Your silence doesn't mean you believe them. It means you're giving the lie enough rope to hang itself. They never feared how much you knew. They feared how fast you could see through them. While others were distracted by smooth talk, fake laughs, and forced charm, you were tracking the energy shift in the room. One slight hesitation in their voice. One mismatch between their eyes and their words. One fake grin trying to cover a guilty conscience. That was all it took. You didn't just catch lies, you disarmed them before they landed. And here's the truth they hate most. You don't need evidence stacked a mile high. You feel the fracture. Your brain is wired to process what's missing, not just what's spoken. That's why your intelligence is lethal. You weren't trained to memorize, you were born to recognize. While they were constructing a performance, you were already writing the ending, calmly, quietly, like a surgeon prepping the scalpel before anyone notices the bleeding. They ask, "How did you know?" But what they don't understand is that you don't guess, you sense. You read tone like a lie detector. You watch hands, eyes, posture. You catch timing errors and emotional lag. And the moment your gut clenches, you know it's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. It's truth whispering, "Look again." Imagine a magician performing tricks for the crowd, confident that no one will look behind the curtain. But you're not in the crowd. You're already backstage, watching the wires, listening to the whispers. They can't fool you because you're not watching the show. You're analyzing the setup. That's why manipulators panic around you. They feel exposed just standing next to you. One calm stare from you can make their whole story collapse in their own throat. Sometimes you don't even have to speak. Your stillness says, "I see through you," and they crumble. They try to laugh it off. They call you paranoid, but inside they know they're done. Because once a lie hits your awareness, it starts to rot fast. You didn't collect rumors, you collected receipts. Every contradiction they thought you'd miss was catalogued in your mind, like files on a hard drive. And when the time came, you didn't scream. You dismantled their entire script with one sentence. No drama, no mess, just surgical truth. This is why they call you dangerous. Not because you're violent, but because their masks can't survive your presence. And when your intelligence meets their deception, only one walks away intact. Number 4. You think in 4D, they're still crawling in straight lines. They call you complicated because their minds can't survive your altitude. They always tried to shrink you, tried to compress your thoughts into tidy boxes they could label, file, and ignore. But your mind, it doesn't run on tracks, it orbits. You're not wired to think in a straight line like them. You're a web of insight, a storm of depth, moving through angles they can't even perceive. While they walk from point A to point B, you're already 3 dimensions deep, circling the perimeter, scanning the patterns, calculating what's unspoken before they've finished step 1. They think it's magic. They think it's luck. They whisper, "How do you always know before it happens?" But it's not magic. It's muscle, mental muscle. You trained yourself to zoom out and see the entire architecture, cause, consequence, emotion, history, and intent all at once. You don't just react. You pre-feel, you pre-see, and that's why your mind terrifies them. Imagine this. They're reading one line of the story, still trying to sound out the words. Meanwhile, you've already read the ending, seen the foreshadowing, and flipped the book upside down to study the binding. You weren't guessing. You were comprehending at a higher altitude. That's what it means to think multidimensionally. And that's why they hate being around you when they're lying, hiding, or planning behind your back. Because you already know. Before they open their mouths, you've already predicted the next 3 moves. They live in a loop, cause and effect, stimulus and reaction. But you design the loops. You forecast the aftermath. You don't wait for the fire. You read the smoke patterns in the air. While they scramble to fix things after they fall apart, you're already 3 steps ahead, preventing the collapse before it even starts. That's not overthinking. That's strategic depth. That's awareness most people don't survive long enough to develop. Your insight doesn't just come from logic. It comes from emotional resonance, intuition, pattern memory, and clarity they can't replicate. That's why they accuse you of thinking too much. It's not an insult. It's a confession. They're admitting they can't keep up. They can't follow your mental trails because they were built for shallow waters, and you were built for the Mariana Trench. Your mind is layered like a symphony. While they hear one melody, you catch the dissonance behind the harmony. You see who's faking peace, who's hiding fear behind laughter, who's building tension behind fake support. And when the puzzle pieces lock into place in your mind, you don't even need to speak. Your next move says everything. They can't predict your reactions because your mind doesn't follow their script. They want you to think inside their timelines, their boxes, their systems, but you think outside all of it because you were never made to follow a map. You are the compass. You read signs from places they don't even recognize as signs. While they call it weird, the universe calls it weapon-grade insight. And now they're unsettled because they realize you always knew. That conversation they thought fooled you. You clocked it. That motive they tried to hide, you tracked it before they even finished the smile. Your intelligence doesn't just spot the fake. It disassembles it in silence. They're used to controlling people with confusion, but your clarity ruins the game. So let them stumble through their one-dimensional strategies. Let them pretend they're 5 steps ahead while you've already written the exit plan. You're not playing on their board anymore. You built your own. They'll never catch up. Not because you're hiding, but because your mind doesn't wait around to be understood. Number 5, you didn't solve their chaos. You saw through the setup. They called you difficult because you wouldn't play a game rigged to make you lose. They never wanted you to win. They just wanted to watch you struggle. Every problem they handed you wasn't about growth. It was bait, a test, a trap designed to measure how easily you could be controlled. And if you played along, if you jumped through their hoops with a smile, they called you smart. But the moment you paused, questioned, or refused to participate, they labeled you defiant, disrespectful, a problem. But here's the truth, they weren't testing your intelligence. They were trying to bend it. They fed you chaos dressed as challenges, manufactured stress, petty power plays, fake emergencies, all to keep you distracted. But you didn't fall for it. You didn't get caught in the loop. While everyone else was busy trying to win a game built on smoke and mirrors, you were already stepping off the stage, tearing down the illusion. You saw what they didn't. Real intelligence doesn't waste time proving itself to fools. It preserves its energy for what actually matters. Imagine a maze built to confuse you, twisting turns, false exits, shifting walls. That's what they threw at you. But instead of running through it like they expected, you climbed out and looked down from above. You didn't play harder. You outthought the design. That's what scared them most. Not that you failed their test, but that you exposed it was never worth taking. While they applauded each other for solving fake problems, you were dismantling the entire premise. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped reacting. And in doing so, you revealed that they weren't the test makers. They were the problem itself. They wanted control. You gave them clarity. They wanted compliance. You gave them silence. And that silence, it shattered everything they built. You weren't outsmarted. You were out of reach. They couldn't predict your moves because you weren't even in their system. You weren't trying to pass their test. You were watching it burn. They thought they'd expose your weakness, but they only exposed their desperation. Because when a chosen one refuses to engage, the entire illusion collapses on its own weight. Number 6. You don't just see what they do. You know why they did it. They used masks to hide their intentions, never knowing you were reading the eyes behind them the entire time. Most people stop at the surface. They see a smile and assume kindness. They hear soft words and believe sincerity, but not you. You were never wired to accept behavior at face value. Your mind isn't content with what's shown. It demands to know what's driving it. That's the part that unsettles people. You're not reacting to what they did. You're decoding why they did it. And once you see that, the whole illusion folds in on itself. You don't need evidence in your hand to feel what's true. You sense it in the weight of a pause, in the timing of a compliment, in the slight twitch of the eye when someone says they're fine. While others are hypnotized by appearances, you're already tracing the emotional fingerprints. Your intelligence doesn't wait for confessions. It recognizes patterns and energy. You've walked into rooms and felt the lie before a word was even spoken. That's why fake people panic when you're silent. They think you're playing along, but deep down, they know. You've seen through them, and they're terrified you won't say it. Why? Because silence without denial is exposure. You don't need to accuse. You don't need to argue. You've already dismantled the mask. And when someone's power rests on performance, your quiet awareness is the loudest threat in the room. Imagine this. Someone hands you a perfect gift with a beautiful bow, but you can smell the poison before you open it. That's you. You don't get fooled by the packaging. You assess the intention. You're not caught off guard by flattery, by fake apologies, or sudden kindness from people who used to ignore you. You know when energy shifts, and you trust your perception more than their words. That's not paranoia, that's clarity. While others are trained to react to outcomes, you track origins. You understand that behavior is just the echo, but motive is the explosion. And that's what separates you from the crowd. You're not just watching the waves, you're tracing the stone that hit the water. And here's the part they'll never admit out loud. They hate that you're right. They hate that you see it without them ever saying it. Because when you understand the motive, their control evaporates. Their ambiguity turns to dust. Their strategy dies in your presence. That's not overthinking, that's psychological precision. And that's why your intelligence isn't just respected, it's feared. Number 7. They mistook your silence for weakness, not knowing it was a loaded weapon. You weren't quiet because you were lost. You were quiet because they were revealing everything you needed to know. They never understood you. They thought your silence meant you were clueless, unsure, maybe even intimidated. But what they didn't know was that every second you stayed silent, you were loading the chamber, watching, processing, mapping out the entire situation while they exposed themselves piece by piece. You weren't passive, you were surgical, and by the time you finally chose to speak, it was already over for them. In a world addicted to noise, your silence was your rebellion. They were desperate to be seen, to be heard, to dominate the space with their voices. But you had nothing to prove. You didn't need volume to have value. Your intelligence didn't need an audience, it needed accuracy. So while they were rushing to perform, you were scanning for flaws, contradictions, patterns. They gave you the whole blueprint, thinking you were too slow to catch on. But what they handed you was evidence. What they mistook for hesitation was actually observation, intentional, precise, and lethal. Imagine a courtroom where everyone's shouting, pointing fingers, trying to out-talk each other. And then you stand up, calm, clear, and with the truth they all forgot existed. That's you, one sentence, and the entire illusion caves in. Because when you speak, it's not a reaction, it's a verdict. The silence before was never emptiness. It was the build-up of insight waiting for the right moment to strike. You learned early that the loudest person in the room is often the one most afraid of being exposed. So you let them talk. You let them brag, lie, insult, and underestimate. You let them fill the space with their own undoing. And all the while, you were taking notes with the kind of emotional X-ray most people don't even know exists. They hate that now. They hate that they can't predict you, can't manipulate you, can't outmaneuver you, because you've mastered the one thing they never saw coming: restraint. Your silence isn't submission, it's power, tactical, controlled. And when you finally open your mouth, it's not to argue, it's to end the discussion. And that's what truly terrifies them. You don't just win arguments, you close chapters. You don't scream your truth, you deliver it with the weight of every unspoken observation. Your silence is loaded, and when it breaks, the room falls quiet. Not because you shouted, but because the truth finally walked in. Number 8. You didn't just survive. You studied the fire that tried to burn you. They planned to break you, not knowing you'd use the wreckage to build an empire. They didn't just want you to suffer, they expected it to define you. That was their silent hope, that the betrayal would shatter your mind, that the loss would drain your will, that the pressure would crack your vision. But you didn't break. You transformed. You didn't just survive. You studied the storm from the inside. And now? Now you move with a calm so cold it makes the ones who hurt you shiver. They don't get it. They still think it was luck, that you got through it somehow. But if they looked closer, they'd see the truth. You turned suffering into strategy. While most people run from pain, numb it, bury it, you leaned into it. You tore it apart. You mapped it. You studied how betrayal exposed motives, how silence revealed intentions, how every blow handed you new blueprints. They didn't train you, they revealed you. Imagine this, a warrior locked in a burning house, but instead of trying to escape, they learn how the fire moves, how it breathes, how it flickers, where it hides. When they finally walk out, they don't fear fire anymore. They command it. That's you. The fire didn't consume you, it refined you. And now, You walk through situations others collapse under. You detect danger before it strikes. You move like someone who's been through worse because you have. They don't understand how you always know the right move, the perfect timing, the calmest response. But they never saw you in the shadows, rebuilding yourself piece by piece with the very stones they threw at you. You didn't just get through it. You took notes. You analyzed betrayals, observed reactions, tracked emotional patterns, and memorized how systems break when under pressure. That's why your intelligence isn't cold. It's cooked in fire. You don't guess. You don't hope. You know, because everything they used to try and destroy you became raw material for your strategy. They thought pain would silence you, but it made you surgical. They thought rejection would paralyze you, but it made you dangerously focused. You don't carry wounds, you carry manuals. And now, you're not just surviving, you're 3 moves ahead in every game they play. Let them be confused, let them call it luck. You owe them no explanation, because deep down they know exactly what they built when they tried to break you, and now they can't undo it. Number 9, you didn't beg for praise, so you outpaced them without a sound. While they performed for claps, you perfected your craft in silence, and now the noise belongs to you. They built their identity on applause. Every decision they made was laced with a craving. Will they like me? Will this impress them? But you were never built for the crowd. You didn't care who was watching. You didn't dress your mind up for approval. You didn't modify your brilliance to make it easier to digest. And that's exactly why you left them in the dust without ever asking for their permission. While they chased gold stars, you chased growth. They fed off titles, likes, trophies, and echo chamber praise. But you were sharpening your thinking in silence, where no one could interrupt your process. You weren't after fame. You were after truth. And truth doesn't need a standing ovation. It only needs one thing: to be seen clearly. And that's what you were always built for: clarity over clout. Imagine 2 people, one screaming from a mountaintop, hoping someone hears them. The other is quietly building a mountain of their own, brick by brick, away from the spotlight. That was you. And now that your mountain is higher, they can't figure out how you did it. You didn't play the game. You didn't beg to be included. You didn't show up to the talent show just to prove something to people who could barely comprehend you. They called you arrogant because you didn't seek their praise. But that wasn't arrogance. It was independence. You weren't interested in applause because you were too busy becoming someone worth clapping for. While they were crafting an image, you were crafting substance. And now, they're exhausted from the performance. You're rising from the foundation they never bothered to build. That's what separates you. You didn't need eyes on you to find direction. You followed your own compass. You trusted your internal truth, even when it made you invisible for a while. And now that you've arrived, you didn't need to announce it. Your presence speaks louder than their performances ever could. They can't handle that you succeeded without their praise, that you passed them without needing their permission slips, that you rose without their hands ever lifting you, because now the one who never needed to be seen is the one everyone's watching. Number 10. You don't watch people. You decode their loops before they repeat. They act like they're unpredictable, but you've seen this episode before, and you already know how it ends. You're not just watching people, you're mapping them. While everyone else is caught up in emotions, reacting to surface-level behavior, you're quietly analyzing the rhythm beneath the chaos. You're not interested in what they say today. You're watching what they've done every time the same pressure hits. You don't guess, you calculate. And what looks like intuition to others is actually precision disguised as instinct. They think you're reading minds, but you're just reading patterns. You've studied the way people flinch before they lie, the way they change subjects when they're hiding guilt, the way their kindness increases right before they ask for something. You've watched it enough times to know most people don't evolve, they repeat. And while they think they're unpredictable, you're already 2 steps ahead, calmly anticipating the fallout. You don't make loud predictions. You don't call people out for fun. You let the pattern speak for itself, because once a person shows you who they are under pressure, that's the raw data, and you never forget the rhythm of it. 1 betrayal is an incident, 2 is a pattern, and you've learned to trust the pattern every time. Imagine this: everyone else is watching fireworks, loud, colorful, distracting, but you're watching the person lighting the fuse. That's your intelligence. You're not dazzled by what explodes. You're focused on who built the spark. That's why your movements look so calm. You're not surprised. You already saw it coming 3 steps ago. They call it over-analyzing. But the truth is, you just pay attention in a world trained to scroll past the obvious. You don't need hours of conversation to understand someone. Give you their repeated choices, their behavior under pressure, and the subtle shifts when they think no one's watching, and you'll know everything you need to know. This isn't about judgment, it's about navigation. You don't walk into rooms blind. You don't trust vibes. You track evidence. And that evidence speaks louder than any apology, excuse, or promise they'll ever throw at you. You don't get caught off guard because you don't respond to people. You respond to who they've always been. That's what makes you dangerous. While they act, you analyze, and by the time they make their move, you've already read the script, predicted the ending, and walked away holding the proof. Let them think it's luck. You know better. Number 11. Your intelligence didn't just shine. It exposed everything they were hiding from. They never feared your voice, they feared the mirror it held up to their minds. Let's get one thing straight. They didn't downplay your intelligence because you were invisible. They did it because admitting your brilliance would have exposed their own blindness. Recognizing your insight meant confronting just how shallow, rigid, and conditioned their thinking really was. And most people would rather pretend to be wise than sit in the pain of their own ignorance. So instead of rising with you, they chose to deny you. You didn't just shine, you illuminated, and that's what made you dangerous. Your presence was a silent confrontation. When you spoke, your words didn't just float, they pierced. You asked the kind of questions that left their logic in ruins. You made quiet observations that dismantled years of beliefs they'd never dared to question. And when they looked in your direction, what they saw wasn't arrogance. It was proof that they hadn't been thinking as deeply as they claimed. That's why they mocked you. That's why they rolled their eyes, changed the subject, or tried to discredit you. Because if they took your words seriously, they'd have to tear down everything they built their ego on. And they weren't ready for that. They still aren't. Imagine someone standing in front of a cracked mirror, still trying to convince the world they're flawless. That's what your intelligence does. It doesn't insult, it reveals. It doesn't seek superiority, it seeks truth. But truth, by its very nature, is threatening to those who've built their identities on denial. You didn't just disrupt their worldview, you blew the foundation out from under it. You challenged the comfortable narratives, you shattered the rehearsed answers, you exposed the lazy thinking, the second-hand opinions, the borrowed beliefs. You forced people to confront the fact that being loud isn't the same as being wise. And suddenly, they had to rethink everything. But most people won't thank you for that. Instead, they'll resist, they'll mock, they'll call you too intense, too complicated, or too much. Not because you are, but because you're too real. Because your mind isn't flattered by noise or fooled by performance. You've seen through too much, and when you show up, the illusion dies. You didn't ask to be the mirror, you just were. And in that reflection, they saw how small their thinking really was. That's why they can't stop thinking about you. Even now, your words echo in their self-doubt. Your clarity haunts their confusion. Your ability to make sense of chaos quietly mocks every moment they pretended to be in control. You didn't just speak truth, you embodied it. And now, they're exposed, not because you called them out, but because your presence alone forced a confrontation they weren't ready for. Every time they remember how effortlessly you read the situation, how deeply you understood the unspoken, they feel it. That sting, that shame, that awareness that no title, no degree, no loud opinion could mask the fact that you were always 5 levels deeper. Your intelligence didn't just elevate you, it revealed them. It showed who was thinking and who was performing, who was awake and who was programmed. And that's why they'll never forget you, because you weren't just a person, you were a reality check. Let them sit with it. Let them wrestle with the fact that you never needed to raise your voice to shake the room. That while they tried to perform intelligence, you embodied it silently. And now that the illusion has collapsed, there's no going back. The truth is out. The mirror has cracked, and you're still standing, clear, sharp, and undeniable. And now, let's call it what it is, undeniable. You weren't overthinking, you weren't too quiet, you weren't behind, you were ahead all along. They couldn't dim you, distract you, or define you because your intelligence was never built for their approval. It was built to expose truth and rewrite the rules. And now they're left speechless because you're everything they pretended to be. If this message hit your spirit, show love and let it echo. Like, subscribe, drop 77 in the comments, and share this with another silent genius who's done playing small. The world needs to hear this truth.